back in 1999, and I'd known her.
How did you first become friends? How did you meet?
Well, I met through his girlfriend back in 1999, and I'd known her since she was at university in the UK. And it would be, to some extent, a stretch to say that as it were, we were close friends. I mean, we were friends because of other people. And I had a lot of opportunity to go to the United States, but I didn't have much time with him. I suppose I saw him in the United States, but I didn't have much time with him. I suppose I saw him once or twice a year, perhaps maybe maximum of 3 times a year, and other people. And I had a lot of opportunity to go to the United States, but I didn't have much time with him. I suppose I saw him once or twice a year, perhaps maybe maximum of 3 times a year, and quite often, if I was in the United States and doing things, and if he wasn't there, he would say, well, why don't you come and use my houses? So I said, that's very kind, thank you very much indeed. But it would be a considerable stretch to say that he was a very, very close friend. But he had the most extraordinary ability to bring extraordinary people together. And that's the bit that I remember, is going to the extraordinary people together. And that's the bit that I remember, is going to the dinner parties where you would meet academics, politicians, people from the United Nations. I mean, it was a cosmopolitan group of what I would describe as US eminence.
But was that his appeal then? Was
Yeah,
that
to find out. I want to learn. And so you have to remember that I was transitioning out of the Navy at the time. And in the transition, I wanted to find out more about what was going on, because in the Navy, it's a pretty isolated business because you're out at sea the whole time. And I was going to become the Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. So I wanted to know more about what was going on in the international business world.
in 2000, Epst3in was a guest at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham. He was brought right into the heart of the royal family at your invitation.
But certainly at my invitation, not at the royal family's invitation. But remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this. He was the, as it were, +1 to some extent in that aspect.
Am I right in thinking you threw a birthday party for Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, at Sandringham?
No, it was a shooting weekend.
A shooting weekend.
Just a straightforward shooting weekend.
But during these times that he was a guest at Windsor Castle, at Sandringham, the shooting weekend,
Yep.
we now know that he was and had been procuring young girls for sex trafficking.
We now know that. At the time, there was no indication to me or anybody else that that was what he was doing. And certainly, when I saw him either in the United States, when I saw him in the United States, or when I was staying in his houses in the United States, there was no indication, absolutely no indication. And if there was, you have to remember that at the time, I was patron of the NSPCC's Full Stop campaign, so I was close up with what was going on in those time about getting rid of abuse to children. So I knew what the things were to look for, but I never saw them.
So you would have made that connection. Just for the record, you've been on his private plane.
Yes.
You've been to stay on his private island.
Yes.
You've stayed at his home in Palm Beach.
Yes.
You've visited Ghislaine Maxwell's house in Belgravia in London.
Yes.
So in 2006, in May, an arrest warrant was issued for Epstein for sexual assault of a minor.
Yes.
In July, he was invited to Windsor Castle to your daughter Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday. Why would you do that?
Because I was asking Ghislaine. But even so, at the time, I don't think certainly I wasn't aware when the invitation was issued what was going on in the United States. And I wasn't aware until the media picked up on it, because he never said anything about it.
He never discussed with you the fact that an arrest warrant had been issued?
No.
So he came to that party knowing police were investigating him?
Well, I'm not quite sure whether was it police that were. I don't know. You see, this is the problem.
It was the Palm Beach police at the time. He was convicted of soliciting and procuring a minor for prostitution. He was jailed. This was your friend. How did you feel about it?
Well, I ceased contact with him after I was aware that he was under investigation, and that was later on in 2006. And I wasn't in touch with him again until 2010. So it was one of those things that if somebody's going through that sort of thing, well, I'm terribly sorry, I can't be.
So no contact?
No contact.
When he was serving time, there was no call, no letter, nothing there?
No.
He was released in July. Within months, by December of 2010, you went to stay with him at his New York mansion. Why? Why were you staying with a convicted sex offender?
Right. I have always, ever since this has happened, and since this has become, as it were, public knowledge that I was there, I've questioned myself as to why did I go, what was I doing, and was it the right thing to do? Now, I went there with the sole purpose of saying to him that because he had been convicted, it was inappropriate for us to be seen together. And I had a number of people counsel me in both directions, either to go and see him or not to go and see him. And I took the judgment call that because this was serious, and I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. I had to go and see him and talk.
2010.
Yep.
He threw a party to celebrate his release, and you were invited as the guest of honour.
Oh, in 2010, that certainly wasn't a party to celebrate his release in December, because it was a small dinner party. There were only 8 or 10 of us, I think, at the dinner. If there was a party, then I'd know nothing about that.
You were invited to that dinner as a guest of honour?
Well, I was there, so there was a dinner. I don't think it was quite as you might put it, but yeah, okay, I was there at a dinner, yeah.
I'm just trying to work this out, because you said you went to break up the relationship, and yet you stayed at that New York mansion several days. I'm wondering how long...
But I was doing a number of other things while I was there.
But you were staying at the house of a convicted sex offender.
It was a convenient place to stay. I've gone through this in my mind so many times. At the end of the day, with the benefit of all the hindsight that one can have, it was definitely the wrong thing to do.
Because during that time, those few days, witnesses say they saw many young girls coming and going at the time. There is video footage of Epstein accompanied by young girls. And you were there staying in his house, catching up with friends.
If they were, then I wasn't a party to any of that. I never saw them. You have to understand that his house, I described it more as a almost as a railway station, if you know what I mean, in the sense that there were people coming in and out of that house all the time. What they were doing and why they were there, I had nothing to do with. So I'm afraid I can't make any comment on that, because I really don't know.
Another guest was John Brockman, the literary agent. Now, he described
Really?
seeing you there getting a foot massage from a young Russian woman. Did that happen?
No.
You're absolutely sure, or
Yeah,
you can't remember?
Absolutely sure.
So John Brockman's statement is false?
Well, I don't know Mr. Brockman, so I don't know what he's talking about.
But that definitely wasn't. Definitely wasn't you getting a foot massage from a Russian girl in Jeffrey Epstein's house?
No.
It might seem a funny way to break off a friendship, a 4-day house party of sorts with a dinner. It's an odd way to break up a friendship.
It's a difficult way of putting it. That's a very stark way of putting it. Yes, you're absolutely right. But actually, the truth of it is that I actually only saw him for about the dinner party, the walk in the park, and probably passing in the passage.
This breakup, when you got back, why wouldn't you publicly explain what you'd done? Did you worry that he had something that could compromise you?
No.
Do you regret that trip?
Yes.
Do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein?
Now, still not, and the reason being is that the people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn, either by him or because of him, were actually very useful. He himself, not as it were as close as you might think. We weren't that close. So therefore, I mean, yes, I would go and stay in his house, but that was because of his girlfriend, not because of him.
Was that visit, December of 2010, the only time you saw him after he was convicted?
Yes.
Did you see him or speak to him again?
No, that was that. Funny enough, 2010 was it. At home, I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party at I suppose sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then because the Duchess was away, We have a simple rule in the family that when one's away, the other one's there. I was on terminal leave at the time from the Royal Navy, so therefore I was at home.
Why would you remember that so specifically? Why would you remember a Pizza Express birthday and being at home?
Because going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do. A very unusual thing for me to do. I've only been to Woking a couple of times of ever meeting or being in the company or the presence.
So you're absolutely sure that you're at home on the 10th of March?
Yeah.
She was very specific about that night.
Mm-hmm.
She described dancing with you
No.
and you profusely sweating and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, oh actually, yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And I simply, it was almost impossible for me to sweat. And it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say that there's a medical condition that says that I didn't do it, so therefore.
Is it possible that you met Virginia Roberts, dined with her, danced with her in Tramp, had sex with her on another date?
No.
Do you remember meeting her at all?
No.
Do you know you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her?
No, I have. I don't know if I've met her, but no, I.
Legal deposition,
Mm-hmm.
a legal court document in 2015. She had sex with you 3 times.
Yeah.
She is not confused about this. She said the first was in London when she was trafficked to you. The second was at Epstein's mansion in New York.
That is a date in April, I believe. Is that correct?
She said it was a month or so later.
Yeah. Well, I think that the date that we have for that shows that I was in Boston, or I was in New York the previous day, and I was at a dinner for the Outward Bound Trust in New York, and then I didn't get on with it. But they never happened.
For the record, is there any way you could have had sex with that young woman or any young woman trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein in any of his residences?
No. And without putting too fine a point on it, if you're a man, it is a positive act to have sex with somebody. You have to take some sort of positive action. And so therefore, if you try to forget, it's very difficult to try and forget positive action. And I do not remember anything. I've racked my brain and thinking, oh, well, when the allegations came out originally, I went, well, that's a bit strange, I don't remember this. And then I've been through it and through it and through it over and over and over again. And no, nothing. Never happened.
Epstein's housekeeper, also in a Florida court legal deposition, said that you visited the Palm Beach residence around 4 times a year. You got a daily massage.
4 times a year?
That was what he said in a Florida court legal deposition.
No.
I'm just wondering, when you look back now, is there a chance that those massages might have been the services of someone who was being sexually exploited or trafficked by Epstein?
No. I don't think, I mean, no, definitely not. Definitely not. And I definitely did not visit his Palm Beach house 3 or 4 times a year. Absolutely not. Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming? Yes.
Unbecoming? He was a sex offender.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being polite, in the sense that he was a sex offender. But no. Was I right in having him as a friend at the time? And bearing in mind this was some years before he was accused of being a sex offender. I don't think there was anything wrong then. The problem was the fact that once he had been convicted,
You stayed with him.
I stayed with him, and that's the bit that as it were, I kick myself for on a daily basis, because it was not something that was becoming of a member of the royal family, and we try and uphold the highest standards and practices, and I let the side down. Simple as that.
This interview has been exceptionally rare. You might not speak on this subject again. Is there anything you feel has been left unsaid that you would like to say now?
No, I don't think so. I think you've probably dragged out most of what is required, and I'm truly grateful for the opportunity that you've given me to be able to discuss this.